What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Scratch Agency podcast, hosted by Scratch Agents for Scratch Agents. My name is Stephen Turnbull, founder of T5 Insurance Services in Utica, New York, and I'm joined by my co-host, the one and only Mr. Sean Fitzgerald, founder of LAF Advisors in Long Island, New York. Sean, how you doing down there, sir? You hanging in there? We got some smoke rolling through the good old state of New York this week. It's been very interesting.
Wild. Yeah,
it's interesting the delay. It started here in Utica about Monday and just hit Sean yesterday, which would be Wednesday. So it's been been kind of interesting. You know, we don't have the hurricanes or the tornadoes or anything like this. So when something happens like this, it's different.
Yeah, it's different. It's like someone called me yesterday, and the only way I could explain it is like it almost looked like you lived on Mars. Like everything's orange outside, you know. But now it's starting to clear up today a little bit. You can still smell it in the air a little bit, but it's definitely way better compared to yesterday.
Yeah, well, our thoughts and prayers go out to everybody in Canada. If we have any listeners out that way, I'm not sure if we do, but everybody that's dealing with that, our thoughts and prayers go out to you today. But, man, I'm super excited to bring on this next guest. You know when Sean, you just have that first conversation with someone, you're like, this is a cool dude.
Yes.
You know, this happened for me a couple months ago, and I sat down and had a Zoom call, I believe, with Tamron Manning, and that's our next guest today, so we're super excited to welcome him on the show. He's the agency owner of Integrity Insurance Group from Georgetown, Kentucky. Tamron, welcome to the Scratch Agency podcast. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing great, man. I just want to thank you all for having me. I thank you all for what you're doing. The Scratch Agency podcast is huge, man, so I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So introduce us to Tamron. For those who are learning about us for the first time, tell us your story, how you got to where you are today, and then we'll dive into the Scratch Agency stuff.
Yeah, for sure, man. Like most people, just kind of fell into the insurance industry. I actually started out as a basketball player with pro aspirations. I actually finally made it. I made it to become a pro. I played overseas in Ireland. And like that same season-ish towards the end, I ended up having my first daughter, who is 5 now, which is crazy. But I had her, so I had to move back home and like figure out life in the working world. And I kind of dove into working in insurance. I had a buddy that owned an Allstate agency, and he thought I had the personality that would fit a salesperson. So I locked in with him, and we did it. And now I'm here, man. Now I'm here owning my own agency. About, I guess that's 3 years later after that.
That's awesome, man. What made you take the jump from? Were you a producer at the Allstate office?
Yeah, just a producer. Honestly, what made me take the jump, and I'm sure we'll get into this a little bit more, but I just had I just always wanted to own my own business, man. I got a entrepreneurial spirit, and I just wanted to own my own business, kind of create something from scratch. And this was like the best opportunity. I feel like opening an insurance agency, like that part isn't super difficult, but what we'll get into is what difficult is on the other side of once you like open the doors and you know I have an agency.
Yeah.
That next part is difficult, but actually like opening one, I felt like this is pretty simple. I can get into it, understand insurance itself as best as I can, and I just jumped into owning an agency, man.
Man, that's really cool. So how long were you at Allstate for, roughly?
I was only, and I will say I will not recommend this, but I was only at Allstate for about 1.5 years, and I was just itching, man. I was itching to get out. I realized I didn't get any renewals, so I realized I was missing out on renewals. I didn't get a super high like commission pay either. And then when I just started meeting people and networking, which was the best thing for me, is just talking to other people, I realized what I was missing out on. And then I was introduced to the independent space, because as a insurance consumer, you don't really know like how it all works behind the scenes as far as captive and independent. So once I got introduced to the independent space where you can have multiple carriers, you can shop, truly shop for the client and do what's best for them, I was like, man, this is a no-brainer.
So what part of that do you say you don't recommend? Is it the time? Are you saying you wish you had more time to try to figure out, or what part? Let's dive into that a little bit, because I think it's incredible. A year and a half in the industry and then go out on your own. It's like our friend Maverick, who had the same type of deal. I was almost
Yeah.
7 years before I went on my own, and I have no idea what I'm doing every day. So I think that's incredible to talk about betting on yourself and just jumping right into it. What part of that are you saying don't recommend?
Well, first I would say, for me, I recommended it. Because like I said, I was itching, man. I was just ready to start something and to build something. And I think it's all about your tolerance for risk, as far as like how much are you willing to like truly delay gratification, because you're not going to make a lot of money at the beginning. You probably would make more as a producer in most cases, especially at the beginning, because you'll probably draw a little bit of a salary. But for me, I was willing to like take those risks. But the reason I say I wouldn't really give that advice to somebody else, because it's totally a personality trait. So if you're somebody who's like kind of iffy, or you need to learn more, but I'm the type that I learn as I go and I figure it out. I'm not really scared of making mistakes. I'll like make the mistake and I'll figure out the mistake and then I'll keep going. But I know some people, when they make a mistake, they're like shot for the next month and they can't overcome that mistake. So I just wouldn't condone it because of that. And just there's so much that comes along with opening an insurance agency. It's not just like how to sell insurance, so now you can go open your own agency. You got to know what kind of management system to use, CRM to use. You got to make sure the phones work. You got to make sure your phone system can text if it's possible, and just like all the stuff that goes along with it. So I would suggest learning as much about insurance as possible and making as much money as a producer as possible, so you can kind of live pretty good while you're building up your business once you start on your own.
Yeah, I think own. It's funny. I was thinking about this the other day. Like owning a business, specifically an insurance agency, it's almost hard to explain in words how difficult and challenging it actually is, but how rewarding it is, right? Like if you were to talk to a producer that is excited about, or maybe they're thinking about becoming an agency owner, I don't think you can even put in words like how difficult it actually is.
Oh no,
You know what I mean? It's almost like having a kid, right? It's like the most
Yeah,
amazing thing in the world, but it's so hard to explain to somebody, you know?
I totally agree. It's like you don't know what you don't know. I guess is in
Yeah.
essence, it's so much that's on the other end of opening that it's super hard, like you said, to explain to a producer who's wanting to do it. So I just hate when people ask for advice, like, "Hey, how did you get started? I'm trying to do that too." My best advice that I give people is just learn as much as you can, and be patient if you have the opportunity to be patient. Like if you like where you work, if you like your current
Yeah.
owner or boss, be patient and just learn under them, and be transparent with them and let them know what you're trying to do. And they may give you some good tips and show you some things that you might not be shown if they didn't know you wanted to open your own agency.
For sure.
Now through the scratch agency journey, since we do interview a lot of people that have started their own agencies, and that's the point of the show and all that good stuff, we immediately resort to like, what was something that you didn't expect that was going to be so hard and was hard, right? Now for you, what was something that maybe was surprisingly easier than you expected, or something that when you got the business off the ground and said, this is something I'm maybe worried about, like, that you picked up on? Or was there something that surprised you kind of the other way, where you thought it would be challenging, but it wasn't as challenging as you thought?
For me, I would say that the part that wasn't as challenging as I thought was um, getting business. Actually, weirdly, I think the leads and the amount of people that were interested in getting insurance, I think, was pretty surprising. I thought it was going to be like, man, I'm gonna do like one client a month, 2 to 5 clients a month, but I jumped out of the gates pretty quick, and that was super surprising. So how quick I grew was probably the most surprising part. I wasn't expecting that.
Why do you think
And
that was? Sorry, Sean.
I think a lot of it was I was able to, one, market pretty cleverly on social media. I did some build up things post opening, so I didn't just like open and then people knew I had an agency. I was doing stuff probably like 2 months out from my open date
Oh,
because I
cool.
had left Allstate and I was doing like preparation for like 2.5 months. So I was doing things leading up. And going back to the basketball reference, I still live in the town that I grew up in. So I had some cachet built just based on growing up here and living here and stuff. So that helped as well. But it was just super surprising at how people were so interested in wanting to come on into my agency.
Mhm.
And Tamara, what did you do for, because I'm curious from this standpoint, something that I'm just thinking about myself here for a minute that I thought was going to be difficult that wasn't as difficult for me
Mhm.
was carrier access, right? Because I
Okay.
had the relationships from being in the industry for 10 years prior. So for you, how did you navigate that whole atmosphere coming from a captive space and not having like years and years of experience? Like, how did you know what carriers to go to or who to talk to for that?
Yeah, that's a great question. First of all, getting carrier access is a lot harder, I think, than it probably should be. I mean, I feel like um, carriers should want business, but I kind of understand both sides. But I do think it should be a lot easier. That is a really tough part about opening. But for me, I was able to secure with you, which you all had Cruise on your podcast. I was able to secure Erie. Erie writes in Kentucky, so I
Mm.
was able to secure Erie contract, which is I mean, it's tough to do that, especially as a new agent. They just have so many regulations and stuff. So I was able to secure that, and then what I did after that is build around them with some other carriers that wouldn't really mind being with them because sometimes they don't play well with others. So I have like Progressive and just some carriers that can take over some of the stuff that doesn't really fit well with Erie. So like Progressive, Bristol West, those came on pretty easily. And then I'm in talks with getting some other standard carriers now that I've built a book and I can kind of present to them like, hey, this is my book size now. Um, and I have like a plan of like Erie doesn't take everything, and I need a number two, a number three type of carrier that's standard and that people know and I've heard of. So that's kind of where I'm headed into with year three coming up soon. So that's kind of where I'm going now. But Erie was how I got my start as far as just getting a carrier that I can write business with pretty quickly.
And so, did you have Erie set up, and that was the plan to start with Erie, and then get your number two, number three carrier, as you said, before you started the agency? I mean, was that part of your business plan, or was that something that was like, I'm going to figure this out as I go? Okay, I'm open for business now. I need carriers. Who's going to take me? I mean, how was that planned out for you?
It was a part of my business plan. I was introduced um, to Erie by another buddy of mine, just networking. He was like, "Man, Erie has a really good product." Because I'd never heard of Erie as a Allstate agent. I've seen some clients that I was trying to get with Allstate that had Erie, but I just didn't know anything about them more than that. So once I was networking and stuff, somebody reached out and was like, "Man, Erie has a good product. Reach out to them and see what they're doing as far as bringing on scratch agents with no prior book. Reach out to them." I was able to get in contact with a rep that they had, and I did an interview with them, and I showed him my business plan that I created. Already, and then I had to do a new one that was kind of predicated to them. But I showed them that original business plan, and they were excited about it, and the relationship just made sense after that. So it wasn't planned when I left Allstate. It was kind of one of those things where it's like, okay, what do I do for carrier access? I didn't want to use the aggregator really, so I had to go a different route, and that just hit me right in the face.
So when you first opened, did you have a plan as far as I'm assuming coming from Allstate, you're probably a little heavier personal lines?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And like, is that still in the plan? Are you trying to level it out with commercial? Or like, what's that looking like for you right now?
Man,
Because I know
honestly,
Erie's pretty good at both, right?
yeah, they're monsters with commercial actually. What I've been trying to do at the beginning, so year one, and just for some context, I'm 2 and about 7 months in, so 2 years and about 6 or 7 months in right now. So what I wanted to do for the first year and a half, basically, was kind of just build the foundation with personal lines because I knew it and I could write it and I didn't have to really like do a lot of learning and training on it. So I wanted to start out fast with personal lines and build a good solid book. Maybe get to like 1.5 million to 2 million with a solid personal lines book. And then once I could hire somebody to kind of take over some personal line sales so we could keep that going, it would free me up to kind of train some commercial stuff. So I played around with that idea to kind of bring in some more commercial. I've written probably have about a 10% commercial book right now, but it's totally on accident. No prospecting, just some of my personal lines people own a business or I know the owner of such and such business and I just reached out. So I've learned kind of commercial that way, but I'm not a super commercial monster like I feel like I could be as far as like mod and all the stuff that you want to learn and make sure you can talk about with that business owner because business owners are pretty savvy. They're not like super insurance savvy, but they're more so savvy than I would say a personal line shopper.
Sure. Yeah.
So you want to kind of come with you want to talk their lingo and make them understand what you're trying to do. So I definitely didn't want to go into that being a super novice. So I want to do some training, do some learning, maybe get one of those some credentials behind my name, maybe a CIC or something. I think that would be a good start. But that's kind of my plan right now, is to kind of build that personal lines book to where that renewal was coming in. I got that good. I got some referral partners that I can bring on another personal lines producer to kind of keep that churning while I build up the commercial stuff.
So it's staying in line with what we're talking about building the business. Right. I think it's interesting so far how this conversation's been just about building the business. And something that's different for you, Tamron, than Sean and I is you said for about 2 months you were marketing while you were setting up. You were really planning this thing. And Sean, I don't want to speak for you, but I know enough of your story where more as like with me, it was like one day we're doing this and we're doing it now. And it's you get to say license, get this signed up. Oh, you need to be a part of a cluster to get appointments. New to this. We're doing it as we're doing it while we're putting in the first app. And I think it's different. Talk about that for the listener that's listening to the show right now, that's saying, I want to do this someday. Right. And has the time, maybe the finances and the resources to plan it out correctly. Talk about what your thought process was for planning the agency out. Rather, I got into it with my boss and I don't like working for them anymore. Now I'm going to start my own, or more of a forced start of an agency versus actually planning it out. Does that make sense? I know it's kind of all over the place, but I think it's interesting because your planning compared to Sean and I's story of how we started our agency are so different that I think there would be different points to hit there.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think for me, I was fortunate, like I said, enough to be a producer, to have some savings or some money built up where I wasn't going to be like not being able to eat if I wasn't working at the time. So I kind of built enough cachet there to do that. So for me, planning it, I planned my insurance business based around just that. I didn't want to be, I knew what I wanted to be. I guess I want to say I knew exactly what type of agency I wanted. I've seen some like other agencies that I'm like, okay, that's kind of where I want my agency to go. And I was able to kind of reverse engineer it. So I knew I wanted to be a big agency. I didn't want to be a Main Street agency. I didn't want to be a lifestyle agency. I love golf, but I don't want to be the guy that has a CSR in here answering the phone while I golf and I come back and she tells me what happened. I don't want to do that. I want to build a nice size agency with 10 to 15 people working, nice office. That's kind of the style I want. So I knew that already. So I knew I couldn't get to that point by just like jumping in my office and get to selling. So I had to build a true business plan that lined out how I could get to that spot. So that was kind of what I did for me. I just knew what type of business I wanted, because I'm more so business focused, which is weird to say, but I'm more so business focused than insurance focused. Like I love insurance and I love the relationships that I've gotten through insurance, and I love the just how it helps people save money or do anything that they want to do, be protected, life. I love all that stuff, but I really enjoy like the business side of
Yeah.
what this opportunity brings. Like I
It's a real
study,
challenge too.
yeah, it's cool. It's like a game to me. Like I study business more than I probably study other things like Starbucks and Chick-fil-A. Like I like that kind of stuff. So I was really diving deep into like why did they do certain things? Why do they market a certain way? Like why do they pick that logo or that name? So that was kind of my thing. I just wanted to really build a true business, and I knew I had to plan it. I couldn't just dive in it and jump in and do it.
And
Yeah, I got
what
you.
was
So
during that process? What was the number one thing on top of your mind? Just for the people that may be listening that are saying, "I'm going to do it this way." Take the time to plan it. What was the number one thing you were worried about? Was it brand?
Marketing.
Was it?
It was
There you go.
marketing.
Yeah.
Marketing. It was number one. So I had to figure out something that separated my agency one, and I had to figure out how do I want to market this product and who do I want to market it to? Like, do I want I had my perfect like profile person or family that I wanted to market to, and I hit that really hard, and I think I did it pretty well at the beginning, and now we're kind of transitioning into some other things. But that was my biggest thing at the beginning is how am I going to market this thing? There's 100 all states, there's 100 state farms. There's 100 insurance agents, it feels like, and more. How can I separate myself, and why would people want their insurance with me? That was my number one thing.
Yeah, it's a good integrity. That's a great name. We talked about it prior to this podcast. I actually almost named my agency that, and I did a last second switch. I don't even really know why, but I just made integrity a core value and ran with it. So I think the name's great. But Tamron, let's switch this up a little. Talk to me about your employees. You have one employee now?
So yeah, so I was fortunate enough to hire somebody pretty early. I would say kind
Okay.
of in this time frame. So I hired somebody. Unfortunately, I had my first firing as well. So
Mm.
going into my whole mantra of like business first, build a business, build. You can't do that by owning a job, so to speak, is what I look at it like. So if I'm the only person in the office for a long period of time, obviously you have to start out like that if you don't get capital, have a lot of capital. So I didn't mind starting out like that, but I knew I had to bring people on as early as possible,
Yeah.
to build a true culture and to build a true business. So I brought on a CSR. Unfortunately, it did not work out how I was hoping it to for it to work out, which I kind of, like we spoke about earlier, I'm okay with making mistakes and figuring it out and getting back up. Like I feel like some people would have took that and been like, okay, I ain't hiring nobody no more. But I'm right back to looking. I'm right
Yeah.
back to trying to figure it out. I understood what I did wrong in that situation, and now I'm just gonna fix it. It's not nobody, no harm. Nobody died. Nobody did. There's no harm. So I'm gonna learn from that. Build over that bridge and fix it. But it's tough, man. I did try to hire somebody, but it just didn't work out.
So this was the first hire.
Yeah, it was my first hire. It was going to be CSR, strictly service to take. Because what I'm trying to do is just fire myself from as many things as I possibly can. First thing I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to do was get service off my plate. I wasn't a big, which I love talking to people, but one of my problems is I don't really multitask well. So if I'm talking to you, Steven, and then Sean is needing a quote, I'm gonna like remember what me and you talked about as far as you wanting to add a Dodge Charger to your policy, but I'll forget that Sean needed that quote. So I'll get home at night and I'm talking to my wife and I'm like, oh shoot, Sean needed that quote. And now I look like I wasn't handling, I wasn't doing that client satisfaction that I speak about because I never got back to Sean. I took care of Steven, but I forgot to get back to Sean. So that was
Mm-hmm.
like, I gotta fix that. I gotta figure that out first. So I wanted her to like take over that service work and we work as a team. But yeah, it just didn't work out. But we'll get it back going.
That's fine as long as you're taking care of me and forget about Sean. That's fine with me. I think I don't think
Switched
there's
up. I know
anything.
he was gonna say
No,
something.
I
I
don't
should
think
have
there's
said,
anything that's changed there.
That's all right. I know you guys have more of a relationship,
Yeah,
right?
it sounds good to me. Tamara, if we can, let's dive into that a little bit. So, how
yeah.
long was the employee there? Why do you think it didn't work? And you talk like, well, why I want to dive into this is because you talk about failing forward. You're learning from this. How
Yeah.
can I do better the next time? And was it on you? Was it on just the employee? Like, talk to us about that. How long she was there?
She was there for she was here about a month and a half.
Okay.
And honestly, guys, it was on me. A lot of it was on me because one of those things that you don't realize when you open, and I think Sean, you can speak on this probably more than I can because I think you have a employer or two. But I was trying to work while she was here, and I wasn't putting enough effort. I didn't realize how much effort it took to like bring somebody along. I totally botched that as far as like, okay, you're gonna have to put some of your work to the side to make sure that he or she is comfortable with what they're doing and they're understanding what they're doing. They don't feel overwhelmed. I treated it as if like, hey, this is the study packet. This is what you have to do. You ask me if you have any questions. So I treated her as if she was like me. Because with me, if you would have hired me, Sean, and you said, "Hey, here's this, knock this out. Let me know if you need anything," I would have knocked it out. I probably wouldn't have asked you any questions, and I would have got everything done. But I don't think the person that I hired learned that way. So I didn't take into consideration that people are different, man. Some people need you to, which you don't want to be a micromanager, but some people may need you to kind of, kick them in the butt a little bit and be like, hey, did you knock that out? Did you get that task done? Did you do X, Y, Z? So I kind of failed at just being aware of the different styles that people learn, and it kind of
Yeah.
was something I learned pretty quick.
I get that. Yeah, it's funny. I had this conversation with Emmanuel at the bar after the Big I event recently. And we were kind of talking about like it sounds kind of silly, but like people's love languages, right? Like
Right, yeah.
figuring out the person what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are, how they like to be rewarded. And it's just a really interesting conversation because everyone is so different, right? Like when I was looking for a producer, and I commend you, man, for just saying that it's your fault
It's on
because
me.
that's
Yep.
the sign. That's the sign of a good leader, man. Honestly. And I went through a similar thing. I hired a producer. It didn't work out. I had to fire him, and I felt terrible. But it was my fault at the end of the day. I could have done a better job interviewing. I could have asked better questions. I could have figured out really what he wanted and what his strengths were. And his strength was not to be a producer. And
Wow.
ultimately,
Okay.
that falls on me for trying to put him in that spot. So I think that is like, again, this is like running a business is hard, right? Like these are the things you don't think about as a producer that you need to know as a business owner is like, how does everyone tick, right?
Yeah.
I recently went to a Top Golf outing and I was speaking to this guy, and now whenever I go to these like networking events, I'm always like looking at people and I'm like, oh, could he be a good fit for LAF.
Yeah.
So
Always
I'm,
very
I'm
cool.
talking to this guy and I'm thinking like instantly I'm like, all right, he would be, I wonder if this guy would be a good producer. And he starts telling me like, my goal is to just have a 401k and kind of just cruise by and have security. And instantly I'm like, okay, this is like he's not a fit for the culture and for a producer role. So
No,
I
I'm
think
good.
the more conversations you have with people, you start to know the right questions to ask
Mm.
to find out if they fit the specific roles.
Well,
You know what I
Sean,
mean?
can you dive into that? Because I think you sort of answered my question there with the Top Golf story, but you went and got a producer, it wasn't good fit. You realized it wasn't good fit. Now you have a producer that's working out well, but the producer fell into your lap and was a good
Yep.
opportunity that worked out. What was different when you said, "Okay, I have the second opportunity. I'm not going to screw this up." Right? What from your standpoint, what was different?
So basically, with the first meeting I had with him, it was more the conversation more went like, I'm focused on self improvement. I'm trying to better myself. I'm okay with making cold calls. You tell me what to do and I'll do the tasks. It was just like it was like, hey, I'm okay with doing the tough things to succeed. And I want to just keep getting better and better and better and better. And I could just tell he had that drive and motivation after, we talked, I think we had lunch for like a couple hours. And it's just something, Tamron, you might get this from playing sports too. It's just something, some people just have that thing. They're not afraid to pick up the phone. They're not afraid of the challenge. And I could tell that with him. He wasn't afraid of the challenge. And he was like, hey, if I have to make 100 phone calls, I'll make 100 phone calals.
Wow.
He's like, you just give me the path and the tasks and I'll do it. And I feel like that right there was kind of like okay, that makes a lot of sense. Because with the first guy, I didn't do the best job of asking those questions. And maybe if I did, he probably would have been like, I feel weird on the phone or whatever the case is. So that's what I feel like worked for me. Like I saw he was up for the challenge ultimately. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you knew what to look for probably the second time.
Yeah.
So at this point, Tamron, you're going back to the drawing table, right? And saying, what can I do differently? And you talked about it a little bit, but let's dive deeper into that. So you said, it was on me, which again, I commend you, like Sean said, for you to say that. That shows how good of a leader that you truly are. But what does it look like? Are you taking more time to put together the how-tos? Are you looking at changing the role? Like what does that look like so that the next person that comes into integrity can succeed?
You know what I'm gonna do different, and I know this answer. That's why I mentioned it so quick because I've been thinking about it. I'm gonna be, and Sean kind of mentioned some of it. I'm gonna be more transparent, open, and like almost try to not scare the person, but make them aware of what they're getting into. So not like be like, not like truly like jump down them, but just like let them know, hey, this test that you're gonna have to take, it's not difficult, but you have to put in the effort. To retain the stuff. Like I don't think the property and casualty test is hard, but if you don't put in the effort to really learn the stuff, it's not something that you just know by common knowledge. You have to learn it. It's something you learn. So I'm going to really be upfront about just how tough that part is, and just get that person's reaction. If they're like Sean said, if they're like, man, I'm up for that challenge. I can study it. I can do this. Then I'll be all for it. But if they give me any sense of like, not laziness, but any sense of just like not willing to put that much effort into it or just studying a little bit, because it'll catch you, man. If you just study a little bit and you don't really lock in on the material, you'll know, because you won't get that passing grade that you need. It's a standardized test, and they know exactly how much that person needs to know to pass it. So that'll be what I do different for sure in the interview process, is just really be transparent with them about how difficult it could be if you're not willing to put effort.
Yeah, it's a really good point.
I mean, if you don't have that conversation, you're just setting yourself up for failure. I mean, maybe you don't get that. Maybe you don't get the service person that you're looking for sooner than you want to. But you're going to set yourself up to be in the same situation if you don't. I mean, it's interesting. Like Sean had, I'm thinking, Sean, of the meeting that you had a few months back with that other producer that you were looking at potentially, and you're like, immediately no. And like, you want another producer, sure, because another producer could grow the agency, but like, what's the point if it's going to cause you trouble, if it's not going to be a good fit? And like, so I mean, that makes complete sense. It's almost
but
like,
it's
it's almost like you want to like try to talk them out of it a little bit. Like, if this situation happened, do you understand this is what it's going to be like, or
it's like Tamron said, is exactly. And just really being transparent with them. Tell them how it was for you when you were a producer, if you were in that role, if you're speaking to a producer. And I remember having conversations with Ryan, like before he came on board, like, dude, the first year is going to suck. I'm being honest with you. Like, you're not going to make a ton of money. It's going to take a while to build, the residual income. You're going to feel like you're working a ton and not making a ton. And it's kind of a really difficult thing to deal with. But if you can like weather that storm, you're going to be in a good position, So I think Tamron hit it on the head. Like, be transparent with them and tell them actually how it's going to be. And the people who aren't going to work out for you are going to kind of just weed themselves out with those questions. You know what I mean?
100%, 100%. It's set in stone. It's almost like sales. Like, is it worth getting that low hanging fruit client, knowing that 10 days from now, they're either going to have a big monster claim or they're not going to pay, something like that. Or is it worth, like, taking your time and getting the thorough client that has home auto, maybe wants to talk about umbrella, that kind of stuff. So it all kind of correlates.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Here's an interesting question. Walk us through what your day looks like. And the reason I ask that is because I think our scratch agency owners, especially if you're by yourself, we're pulled in so many different directions. But it's interesting, although your service person was only there for a month and a half and probably wasn't doing too much independently because you were still in that learning phase, I'm sure there were some things that you maybe pushed off to her that now you're doing again, And when talking about what that day looks like, what's like the few things that Tamron must do to have a successful day at the agency?
Oh, so I have two non-negotiables. that I have to do in the day, and it doesn't really matter when I do it, but it has to get done. First thing, have to work out in the morning. Have to sweat. Have to do something that gets that heart rate up and gets you going. Like I just feel accomplished. I feel so. If I don't work out, I'm like, man, this day's gonna suck. I don't know why it's like that. And then sometimes I have to push myself to work out. But if I don't, man, I feel it around like 4 o'clock. I'm like, man, this day it wasn't that good. Even if I make a lot of sales, I still feel off. So non-negotiable is a workout. And then getting into the office as far as like starting that true work day, man, I try to start off with anything that I missed from the day prior. I use Agency Zoom, so we have I don't know if either of you two use it, but you have the service pipeline, so I know what service needs to get done, what needs to be completed. So I try to do service in the morning, and then I'm right on to some sort of marketing thing. So I'll create a post or make a post or something. So some sort of marketing thing, and then I'm right into follow-up calls, quoting, and prospecting. Pretty much that's how you build the business. So those three things I save for my energy time. I'm normally the most energized, like that 10 to 1 is like my power time. So anything I can get done that is like a little tough, I try to do from 10 to 1.
So you got the time blocking thing down, it sounds like. Do you try to shoot for that?
I try to shoot for it. But being on your own, which I mean, you all have felt that you have that time block for that, and then you don't have the discipline to like when somebody calls wanting something else to be okay with saying, hey, we'd love to take care of that. Fill out our service request form. It'll come into our agency. We'll have all the information and we'll complete it and it'll get finished. As long as it's not something dire, like they're at the dealership right now, they need something. But if you just can get that, and that's the hardest, that's one of the things that is so hard to just really create that self-discipline and know like, okay, this person needs something, but it's not the end of the world if they don't get it in 1 second. Like I don't know what made the insurance industry needing to be so fast. Like you don't get to like reach out to your doctor and ask them like a direct question right away. But in insurance, if somebody needs something, they just feel like they can just touch you and like they have to be able to get to you right away. Yeah. It's the weirdest thing. I've never really been able to understand it. So I'm trying to like break that mold in my mind of like, hey, Susie called and she wants some insurance cards sent to her because she lost hers. You don't have to do that right this second. I mean, you don't have to email those right now. Just let her know you'll do it. Keep doing your prospecting. Don't lose track because that prospecting stuff is like a rhythm. If you break it, now it's taking you 30 minutes to make the next follow-up call or whatever. So that's my big thing right now is just trying to stay intact with the time block and not just making it to where I'm doing this at this time, but actually setting forth the effort to truly do it at that time and not get sidetracked.
It's one of my biggest struggles is trying to do something right away like that. Oh, this will only take me 2 minutes. I can just get it done. And then I'm completely off track with what I was doing. But I think the key in that is, like you said multiple times when you were talking about that, is the communication. Like, hey, we're going to do this. We got it. It'll be done. We heard you. We see your request. We're good to go. As long as you're setting up the communication, you could do it the next day or whatever, depending what it is. That's key.
Yeah. I think that's a confidence level. I don't know. You all have had James Jenkins on. I spoke with him a couple of times, and he's to the point where he's a little bit more tenured than us, but he's to the point where now it's like he treats it as if like getting to him is like getting to the president. It's like we'll get to you in this time and like all this stuff. But that's something that you gain with just expertise and knowledge and that tenured feeling. And I'm really trying to speed up that process because like you said, it can drive you crazy if you're like, oh, I didn't send Susie her thing and she's gonna leave a 2-star review. It's like, no, she won't. She's not gonna. She doesn't care that much. She just thinks she can do it like that. That's what we've trained clients to do.
It's a reflection of us too. It shows how much we care. We want to please them and make the people happy, right?
Yeah.
But as long as you tell them, I think, listen, as long as you tell them, hey, like Steven said, I think, as long as you acknowledge that you have their request, most people are fine if you get back to them end of day in an hour, 2 hours.
Susie is not going to lose sleep that her mortgagee change wasn't done on that day. I'm sure she's not saying, man, I can't. I haven't heard from Tamron. I might call him.
I'm going somewhere else.
That again shows the expectation you set on yourself too, right? I mean, that's like that. That's a super good point.
Tamron, talk to me. I want to go back to the employee thing real quick. Talk to me about why you went with an in-person CSR versus like
good
a
question.
VA as your first hire.
That's a really good question because I was posting. I'm not a big group. I like the Facebook groups, but I'm not big in like posting in them as far as like my own questions. But I posted that one. I was like, should I do a V? I like explained my size and all this stuff and what I was looking for. I was like, should I do a VA or a CSR? And of course, you get like 200 posts of people really not giving you true help. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to figure this out on my own. So I was like, I want somebody in office because I wanted to get them licensed. I wanted to have a feeling of like, okay, somebody's over there doing this. I wanted to be able to just like go into their office and talk to them. Like I just wanted that more personable, quick touch type of feeling. So that's why I went with the in-house, but mainly because I wanted them licensed and I wanted to make sure they could ask me questions like quickly if they got confused or if they were on the phone talking about a billing thing that they couldn't answer. I just wanted to have that like one-to-one connection with them where they didn't have to Skype me or Zoom me or anything like that.
Is this experience changing that thought at all?
It's still the only reason I'm like, I still need somebody in-house is because I do want the VA thing. I know they can't do some of the license tasks, and that's really one I want off my plate. I don't really mind. Well, I wouldn't have to do the other stuff if they were licensed either, but I want that like. I want to change my vehicle. I want that kind of stuff off my plate. I know with a VA, if they're not licensed, they can't do that. So I was like, man, I might as well just get a in-house. So for my needs, from what I wanted off me, I just have to have them licensed, and I figured it'd be easier to do that face-to-face. Well, I thought it would be easier to do that face-to-face.
No, it's an interesting conversation because
Very
There's
interesting.
no wrong way, though.
I'm going to be completely transparent here. Like I went the VA route strictly financial reasons. Like
I
it
just
made
did that
more in New
last
York.
week. Strictly financial
Well,
reasons.
Steven,
You're
would you do
100%
it?
accurate.
Was it strictly for that though, or did you really want a virtual? Like if
No,
you had like let's say you had all the money in the world, would you do in-house first?
yes, probably.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't mean to cut you off, Sean, but I mean, I completely agree with you. But
No.
That's
Yeah.
what it's like.
and it's worked out. I mean, so far it's been 3 weeks. But Sean, you've had your VA for how long?
Almost 2 years now.
And she's fantastic.
Now,
She is.
Sean,
Yeah.
do you think it's good for the VA? So like, did you do the VA before you did the people in your office?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I did the VA was my first hire before I even had a producer.
Now, does he or she, the VA, I mean, do they take some of the tasks off of your employees, like your in-house employees, in-office
Yeah.
employees?
So they do. Yeah. Yeah. So I have her do it. She sends even like say if somebody wants to bind something, she'll send the DocuSign documents. She'll make sure all the data is inputted the right way in the CRM and the agency management system. This way, my producer's not bogged up with doing that stuff. She helps with quoting. She doesn't produce the quote to the client, but she'll input all the data into my PL Rater and maybe some of the carriers that aren't in the PL Rater and upload the quote into Agency Zoom. This way, I don't have to, waste 20 minutes inputting the data into a bunch of different systems, So for me, that is really valuable. But if I'm being honest, if I had all the money in the world, an in-house person would probably be the way to go, just because they can help more with the incoming phone calls too.
That's my thing.
You know what I mean? And that's a big deal. You know what I mean?
That's a huge one. One of my other reasons is like, how can I get these phone calls? If I'm on the phone, I need somebody to answer this one. And when they're gone, when they're away from you that far, it's like, oh, did he or she pick that up, or I missed it, or whatever. So that was the main reason I asked that. Do you use the VA as like a selling point to recruit people? It's like, hey, we have somebody who's going to take this kind of stuff off of your plate. So you're a salesperson at the end of the day. You're not doing a lot of extra stuff.
I wouldn't say I use it as a value prop for like recruiting, but I did like, for instance, like with my producer, I did tell him, hey, we have somebody that assists with updating all the data input. This way, you're not bogged down with just putting information into a system all day. She can help with quoting and things like that. So yeah, I guess I did kind of use it as a value prop, but
It is
not.
one.
I didn't make it a huge selling point. You know what I mean?
Okay. It is one
But
for sure.
And on the other side of that coin, from somebody who's only 3 weeks in with their first VA, I think you're going to be, if you do go that route, at least what I'm going through is you're surprised how much you can have that individual do.
Okay.
Mhm.
Like, even like you said, without answering the phones, well, sure, you got to still do that. But like, and shout out to our friend Billy Williams again, but he's got that inbound process of how to work the lead with the VA, and you talk to the customer and they take care of the rest until you got to go decide the quote or whatever. And like, I think anybody will be surprised at, if you really look at your task, if you look at your day and say, what am I doing? And how many of those things you really could get to a virtual professional, I think you'd be very surprised. But let me end saying that with, everybody's different. Everybody's situation is different. Everybody has a different amount of money that they can invest in the agency at the certain time that they need help. I mean, because your point, Tamron, I'm going through it right now. I'm part-time with my VA right now, and I'm taking 3 to 4 hours a day training them, and all my stuff that I have to do is getting pushed till midnight when I can get to it, right? So like the same, and I'm going through the same thing. Like, holy crap, I didn't realize how much I'd have to kind of walk through this thing, but I'm just telling myself I'm doing this now so that I can get them to learn better, or whatever it is. But so I don't know. I would just caution people from saying, well, what works best for you? Because if it works best for Steven, it may not work best for Sean. It's not going to work best with Tamron. Like, you gotta, what's your situation? And for me, it was, I needed help. I haven't hit my first year renewals. I couldn't, from a financial standpoint, especially in New York, hire somebody to bring him in house that was going to last and be a good fit. And so far, it's worked out going the VA route. So we'll see.
Yeah, it's huge. Where do you live is huge. Yeah.
Yeah, I think too. A really successful agency owner on Long Island told me before I brought on my producer. He said something to keep in mind, especially if you bring on somebody with no insurance experience. It is going to take a substantial amount of time to train them. So he said, "Hey, listen, if I were you, just anticipate that hire. Even if you think you have all your process and procedures in place, your sales might take a little bit of a hit initially, because you are going to, like, kind of like Steven was saying, like, 3-4 hours a day. I'm sure Steven's doing fine, but your sales are probably taking a little bit of a hit. It's okay if you're thinking about the bigger picture, but it's just something to keep in the back of your mind,
Yeah.
Huge, yeah.
Hey, Tamron, as we look to wrap this up and we get to our time here, I love hitting everybody with this question, but I'm excited to hear what you would say as we wrap this up. Tomorrow morning you wake up, integrity's gone, and you got to start over, day one. What's the first thing that comes to mind that you would do differently than you've done over the last two years? What's the first thing that you would do differently than you have already in your scratch agency journey if you had to start over?
It's a good question. For me, what I would do different if integrity was gone when I woke up in the morning, and I had to build this thing up again, the first thing I would do is, you know what? Maybe the first or weirdest answer, but I wouldn't do anything different. I know the blueprint. I know marketing is first. If you want to sell something, you got to market what you're selling, or nobody will know what you're selling. So I would go right back at attacking marketing and understand who my ideal client is and who I can know to reach that person. So what I did was I locked in with mortgage professionals. I love first-time home buyers because they're so eager to get everything. Like they're like getting off of their mom's stuff, they're getting off their dad's stuff. They like wanting life insurance because they just made a big purchase. They may have just had a young child, and I love families like that. I'm kind of like that. So that would be my thing I would do over again, is I would get with somebody who's crushing it in the mortgage field, tell them what my value add is with new home buyers, and hit the ground running that way.
We've asked that question probably 90% of the time. I think we're like episode 33, 34, something like that, Sean. And I think you're the first one to say, I wouldn't change anything. And I mean, you talked, how many times in this episode did we hear Tamron say, failing forward, learning from mistakes, not afraid to make a mistake and pick up and evaluate that mistake? I mean, what's the point in saying, I made this mistake and then just let everything from the mistake fall on top of you? You're not going to learn that way. You're not going to be able to do it better the next time. So he hired his first employee. It didn't work out. And he's saying, here's the things that I did wrong. again, here's the things that I did wrong as the leader to do better on the next time around. So, I mean, if there's anything that anybody listening to this got from there, you're going to make mistakes and you need to learn from them. Right. I mean, I so admire that from you, Tamron. That's just the way that you have the outlook on everything. Thank you very much for joining us. For those people who want to get in touch with you, maybe talk to you about that, talk to you about the agency, just connect with you, where would be the best place to get in touch with you?
Best place for anybody, probably be Facebook. I'm pretty active there. First name, last name.
Awesome. Well, thanks very much for joining us, everybody. That's another episode of the Scratch Agency Podcast. Do us a favor, like the show, share the show, and subscribe. Most importantly, remember to dig down deep, believe in yourself, and own your own future. We'll talk to you next week. Take care.